Hello, my name is Peter Carney. I'm from Digital Catapult, and today I'm going to be explaining the various kit which we have dispatched to you guys as part of the Weather Ledger project. So this is basically a project to measure weather on various building sites, and we've assembled here a set of kit which is used for sites where the power is intermittent. So for example, if the mains power goes off for a couple of hours or a couple of days, this is the kit you need to use. So it'll be delivered in a box like this, and I'm now going to open this. My son Adrian is videoing all of this, so he's our cameraman today. So inside the box there's basically 4 key items. The first is basically a battery. So this is a sealed lead acid battery. It's so-called AGM battery, which means that it cannot leak. Even if it falls over, it can't leak, so it's very, very safe and secure. Then the next thing, let me just put that back on there. The next thing in the box is our Lora base station. I'll explain what all of these do in a few moments and how you connect them together. We've then got our charger for the power supply for the battery, and finally we've got our sensor. So I'll cover the sensor in a second part of the video, show you how to install it, but I'll just give you a quick summary. So essentially the sensor measures wind speed and direction and weather, and that sends its data to the base station, and that is then connected to the internet via a 3G SIM card. So let me explain how all the bits of kit are plugged together. So if you like so Adrian, if you could zoom in a little bit more on this one. So if you like, the heart of the system is this multi-tech gateway. It's a LoRaWAN gateway, which means it speaks a protocol called Lora, which is a long-range radio technology, and it connects to the internet with a SIM card. The SIM card is in here, it's on Vodafone, it's a prepaid SIM, and we'll keep an eye to make sure it's always topped up. So essentially, this device needs to be powered. It's mains powered with a little transformer in the plug. Now, if you have power on site, which is completely stable and guaranteed to always be there, then you actually don't need the battery at all. You can essentially plug that into a main socket and plug this in the back of here. It goes in here, and that will then give you the base station will come online automatically and just run without any problems at all. There'll be some flashing lights on it. That's a good indication that there's power. If, however, you haven't got stable power on the site, so for example, if you're going to install this in a container where the power goes off at the weekend, then you'll need to use these other bits of kit here, which I'll explain. First thing to say is this device is indoor use only, so you can't put this outside. There's a mounting bracket if you want to mount it on the ceiling, so this just unscrews and then fits back on here. Frankly speaking, I would suggest to actually just leave this on a desk or on the floor or something like that, somewhere where it's not going to get knocked or damaged, so that really wants to just be left alone. So if you're in a sort of building site type container, just pop it on a desk and put a mark on it saying do not switch off. So let's suppose for the sake of argument that we haven't got stable power, so then we're going to use this battery. So I'll just move the transformer out of the way. So in the kit you'll find a battery, you'll find a charger for the battery, and a little wiring harness that we've made up. So it's very, very straightforward indeed. So the first thing you need to do is, before you plug this into the mains, you need to make all your other connections first. So the first thing is to get your battery and check that the battery terminal connections are tight. It's just a posi drive screwdriver. Just tighten them up so they're not loose. They're tight at the moment, but you never know, in transport they might vibrate loose. So tighten those up. This is then the output of the battery, so there's a little protective cover on that, stop it short circuiting in transit, so you want to take that off. You then want to take your power supply, and there's a harness that's here. So this part here is polarised, it connects to the battery. So Adrian, if you could just zoom in a little bit more on this. So it is polarised, so you can't get it wrong, but essentially that then connects in like that. Okay, so Adrian, if you could zoom out a little bit. You'll know if the battery is supplying power because this little voltage regulator here has a red light on it, which you can see is illuminated. So that shows that the battery's running and all that sort of thing. Also, even without the power being battery charger being plugged in, you get a value here of the voltage, and it's showing at about 12 volts here. The next thing you want to do is you want to plug this into the Lora base station or gateway. There's only one connection on the back. The connection goes in here, and as soon as you do that, you'll start to see some LEDs lighting up on the back. So even if you would zoom in on the LEDs a little bit. Fantastic. So there's a few LEDs here. One of them shows if the cellular network is running, if there's a connection over 3G, and the Lora one shows that the Lora system's up. This will take about 3 minutes to boot up. So within 3 minutes you should see 3 or so of those lights flashing on and off like that. So once that's powered up, maybe wait a couple of minutes, then you need to plug this into a standard 13 amp main socket. This will then start the trickle charger. You can leave this plugged in all the time. This self-regulates, and as soon as the battery voltage starts to decline, this will kick in, has a fan in it, so it makes a little bit of noise, but it'll keep the battery topped up. And that essentially you can leave running all the time, and leave that plugged in all the time. Now, if the power goes off, what will happen is we'll start drawing power from the battery. This has got enough energy in it for about 3 or 4 days worth of use. So if the power's off over the weekend, that's fine. As soon as the power comes back on, as long as that's still plugged in and switched on, again, probably best mark that as do not unplug, then of course it'll charge the battery up. So that's essentially the LoRaWAN part. So I'm just going to put that to one side, and we'll have a look at the LEDs in a minute. The next part is the sensor. Now, depending on which site you are, there's 2 different types of sensor. This one happens to be the full weather station sensor. So this device here is weather station. I'll explain how it's installed in the second part of the video. I'll film later. But essentially, that wants to be mounted outdoor, can be up to a couple of kilometres away from the base station, but ideally on the same site as the little base station there. That clamps around a pole, and I'll show you that a bit later in the video. It goes around a scaffolding pole, it gets tightened up, and most importantly, it's got to be vertical and pointing straight up on a stable scaffolding pole attached to something or embedded in the ground. And I don't know if you can see this, Adrian, but there's a little N on the side here, which stands for north. It's really important that
you can see it.
That's brilliant. It's really important that the sensor is oriented north, so you'll need a compass or a phone with a compass on it. The reason that needs to point north is that the sensor measures the wind speed, and therefore, so wind speed and direction, and unless you're in this correctly, you'll end up with an incorrect north reading for the wind direction.
And is it true north or magnetic north?
It's magnetic north will be fine. So that's basically all the kit, and what we'll do in a minute is we'll go outside and film me installing this outside, but for now, that's the main part of the kit. Just before we stop the video, let's just have a look at what's happening with the LEDs. So again, Adrian, if you'd zoom in on me. So what we can see is there's one that's called cell. That means there's a cellular network. It's flashing. That means we can see the network. The Lora one is up, and there's another one which is called status, and that should be blinking. So Lora should be on all the time. The cell one should blink intermittently, and the status should blink quite frequently. That's it. Thanks so much, Adrian. You can now stop the video. So this is how to actually install the wind sensor, wind speed and direction sensor. So you want to mount it as high up as possible. So in this case, I'm actually mounting it on a scaffolding pole on top of a building. It wants to be as high as possible, and ideally away from any obstacles. So you want to get a good flow of wind over it. So in this case, you need a standard scaffolding pole. I think it's 2.5 inches is the diameter, and it wants to have a nice flat top, because it's very important that the wind sensor is as vertical as possible. So I've got the sensor here. I'm just going to. So as you can see, the wind sensor has a bracket, and that fits around the top of the pole, and then it's tightened up with 2 nuts. So that wants to sit on top of the scaffolding pole. You'll notice that the sensor's got an N on it,
for north, so that wants to point towards compass north, as accurate as possible. If you, of course, orient it slightly a few degrees out, that's not the end of the world, but it will mean that your wind direction readings are a bit off. So you want to point that north, so use a compass or a sensor on a phone. And then what you want to then do is tighten up these two nuts here. So for that you'll need a ring spanner or an adjustable spanner. The housing is made out of sort of high density plastic, so if you over tighten it, it will crack. So you want to tighten it finger tight, if you like, and then just tweak them up with an adjustable spanner. So I'm just going to tighten those up a bit. So it just wants to be so that the sensor won't come off and won't rotate in the wind. So that should be good enough. So we'll just check that out. So that's good and solid. So the sensor is made out of two parts. There's the actual gauges that measure the wind speed, direction, rainfall, that sort of thing. And then, and if you've just got a wind speed sensor only, it's a little bit smaller, but it's basically the same principle. And then you've got the actual transmitter module that's this little box here. Now, the transmitter module doesn't need to be high up, so it's got comes with a bunch of cable. I think it's got 5 or 6 meters of cable. So if you like, you can mount the transmitter module at the bottom of the pole. The reason you might want to do that is that it does have batteries in it. Batteries are designed to last for about a year or so, but you might find that you want to change them at some point. So if it's possible to mount the transmitter module low down on the pole, so you can have access to it without having to get a cherry picker or climb up there. So the sensor tie wraps on. There's a plate on the back. You can put a couple of tie wraps through there, and then obviously make sure that the cable is well bundled up and also safe and secure, and it's not going to get tangled in anything like that. The sensor itself is worth about £1,500, so you really don't want to get it stolen or drop it or break it, ideally. So put it in a sensible place whereby no one's going to have access to it without permission and that sort of thing. So to change the batteries in the box, there are just 4 screws that you can undo with a flat blade or positive drive screwdriver, and inside there you'll find the little board. On the back of that there are 2 batteries. So we can keep an eye on the battery level remotely. One of the bits of data that's sent back is the battery level, but just in case you need to access it, you undo those 4 screws. The front plate comes off this box, and then inside there you'll find a couple of batteries. So that's basically the install. Very straightforward. It shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes to get that up and running. And if you give us a call when you've got the sensor and gateway installed, we can check remotely that it's all come up online and that sort of thing. So thanks very much for listening, and good luck with your weather sensor.